sense sphere. You must listen to our demands.
Hello. Do you know what? I was 8. I remembered vaguely the Master from Frontier in Space and the Sea Devils. I was mad on the Fourth Doctor, played by Tom Baker. Doctor Who was gripping stuff. But Sarah Jane had just left. Then we are served this gritty political conspiracy theory thriller at Saturday tea time with an emaciated skeleton master. The voice by Peter Pratt was chilling, and I personally feel beats Gabriel Wolf's in Pyramids of Mars for freezing me to the spot. It was withering, it was demonic, it was frightening. Add the body horror, the macabre, and you have a very excited 8-year-old every Saturday, straight after Basil Brush. Yep, I've checked. The Deadly Assassin is clearly now a classic. But while we enjoyed it, did it also introduce concepts and ideas that have undermined the Doctor and the show ever since? You know, you cannot watch The Sense Sphere without a debate and without some difficult questions. So join us for that. And if I can just remind you of what let's have a look. And if I can also remind you, please, I'm being naughty, to click on the like button and switch on your notifications. You know it makes sense. Yeah, good old story. Loved it myself. There it is. That's a big clicker of a switch, that, I tell you what, but go for it, please. And of course, we are never happy on this channel, are we? We have you surrounded. We know some people are watching this and they haven't even subscribed. How very dare they? Right, we have you surrounded. Surrender your subscription to us. Owie. Pay me. Right, so subscribe, click on your notifications, give us a like. Now, as I was saying earlier, we've been going on forever, it feels like already. There you go. There, X, get us a DM on there. The yellow box tells you, email us at Sense the Sphere. And please, if you want to come on, if you've got ideas. Now, as well as tonight's Deadly Assassin, we are going to look at, is Gallifrey and the Time Lords now problematic because of maybe what was ably introduced by Robert Holmes, but has since been used maybe by weaker writers, lazy writers. And, I'm going to contest with every classic story, well written, brilliant world building. Do you then have the problem story that goes with it? Like, for every deadly assassin genius, do you get a timeless child story? Because as soon as you've set precedent, somebody else thinks they can go and trespass, don't they? So, I like to show little kind of tidbits from the past, especially the colorized ones. Look at that from Dalek Invasion of Earth. From rehearsals, you can see William Hartnell there, not with wig on, and you can, just going through the lines, working out their positions. Absolutely brilliant. I love to see stuff like that. So, as you know, I'm going to test our regulars as they come on, and our first one tonight, we might have strange sound effects tonight. Let's see how we go. So it's the Queen of the Walk. Hello. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Royalty is here. Hi, bow. Hello.
Now, do you know that one?
I actually don't know it. Actually, now I think about it,
I always know.
I don't know it.
I always know
it is.
Yeah. I always know from the green jacket.
Yeah.
And I know, obviously, because I'm older than you, and we had the 5 Faces of Doctor Who, and it's the Carnival of Monsters.
Ah.
Oh, Big Brother. I mean, look at that eye. It's
Do
fantastic.
you know, I actually haven't seen that one.
It's actually a kind of comfort one for me. It has it's got it smells of the Pertwee era so much. It's just so good.
Yeah.
And it's nice to get Pertwee traveling again. So yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see who else we can get on now. So I've got, where is he? He's in California. There he is, Gary. I've got Zoe for you.
Oh yes, thank you so much. My little midweek gift is Wendy Padbury. That is the Crotons.
That is very good. The color does test you, doesn't it? Sometimes.
I go by generally. Zoe wore something completely different in every story, kind of like Sarah did. So,
and one of our panelists from yonks ago, I think he said he's been stuck in a time eddy. Here he is. It's John.
Oh yeah. How you doing?
We're all good. We've been waiting for you. Now, I know you don't know that, but look at that. Do you know, this is when you realise what fun Doctor Who was in the past.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's got to be the moon base, isn't it?
Yeah. Or as I know as a kid, you see, I never knew it was called a moon base because I read the book first.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And the audio where they do that.
Oh, I don't know. I just absolutely love it. What about this one then? Just to check everybody out. What set is that from?
don't give it away.
Yeah. I mean,
This is a colorized one. Yeah.
no, it is from 70 plus, if you get my gist.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a few echoes.
It's not the sea
I
devils.
don't know.
Um,
It's an underwater one, isn't it? It's got to be.
We've got a few people in the margin telling us, or the thread, should I say? I'll say it now so we can move on, but it's the Green Death.
okay. I was going to
The
say it's not
green-
Ambassadors of Death.
I'm back. Am I sounding all right?
Yes.
Hopefully. So we'll keep plodding on because we're going to do Deadly Assassin Time Flash in a minute. And of course, look at this one. And I wanted to introduce you to something here. I mean, it's slightly colorized from the Crusade, and we've seen various shots like this. But it made me think, because I found another one from the Crusade. If you
Right.
can see that one. And there's, Jacqueline Hill there, all dolled up.
Yeah, there's
And-
Rex Harrison.
Yeah. Now, I just thought because it causes a problem because we talk about cultural appropriation nowadays, don't we? And so if I show you this, there's good old Tom Baker from
One of my favorite movies,
Sinbad.
Golden Voyage of Sinbad, where he played Kura.
But you see, this is the problem nowadays when people talk about cultural appropriation and everything. This wouldn't be allowed now, would it? This would be seen as problematic, Rachel.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, they'd be like, "Why aren't you casting so and so? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?" Yeah, it would cause a lot of temper tantrums. But back in that day, it would have been fine because
Are you
they
happy
wouldn't
with
have had
Are you
anyone.
happy with repeats being shown of stuff like this?
Yeah, absolutely fine. I'm cool with it.
Because when I was watching back on iPlayer, our show for tonight, Deadly Assassin, did you notice anybody? I know Gary won't have, but have you noticed that the drowning scene, for example, was completely cut?
How did you
As in,
watch it? Where did
you could hear him splashing around, and then it just cut to end of episode 3, and then at the start of episode 4, you saw his face underwater for a split second, and he's out.
Yeah.
They've changed it.
Is that what, on iPlayer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it still have the line where Goth says, "You're finished, Doctor, finished"?
Oh, I think so. If
Yes,
you look
yes.
if you're looking at his face, you still have that. But yeah, it had gone. So
That's kind of almost where they should have cut it originally, because they could have cut it on Goth going, "You're finished, Doctor," because you already knew that he was putting him in the water. And then if they would have cut that final freeze frame, who knows how our world would have been different.
You can cry cultural appropriation on absolutely anything because just fun fact here, within casting, when they're looking for someone specific, what they do is they put out the races that sort of look similar.
Yeah.
So, if you have like a Chinese person, sometimes that might be played by a Japanese person and that sort of thing. You could say, well, that's cultural appropriation. You could cry
So,
that.
but of course, this is just classic. Tom Baker there for the Egyptian Independence Day years ago, flying the flag flying the scarf.
I was
I
going to say,
thought this
I'm
was
glad.
I thought this was a missing scene from Pyramids of Mars.
Oh, if they could only have blooming paid for it. Look at that. I mean, if only. And Rachel won't know this on the right. Gary, you won't either, and neither will John when we get him back. But basically on the right there, you've got From the Book Tower. And this is when Tom Baker at tea time on ITV used to do a program. He'd come down those stairs and he'd introduce one or two books for the kids to actually go and buy. And it was great because it was our doctor. It was a bit like when you used to have Who Done It with John Pertwee, and so you got two for the price of one. I know it was straight after him doing Doctor Who, so you felt as though you had John Pertwee for a couple more years beyond his role.
Do any of those episodes still exist?
I'm sure they do.
One.
I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm sure they do. But it was great because he was very Tom Baker, and he was, delightful, and he brings books alive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
hello.
that was the Book Tower. And just to finish off this little section, let's go back to the beginning. The original
lovely.
doctor visiting the kids in hospital in full garb.
Lovely.
From the beginning, this show was winning kids over, and never. What did Jason Quinn say the other day in Doctor Who Monthly? That even in 2005, it was a slow burner. No, it was not.
No, it wasn't. Please.
No, Doctor Who was a hit. And you can see God, Doctor Who's in your hospital ward. Can you imagine it?
You boys, get off my bed.
Yeah. Oh no, it'd be great.
That when you see shots like this or Capaldi sitting with all the kids surrounding him, that's what it's all about.
Right. Well, just before we get to Deadly Assassin, things might come crashing down now, and I'm sorry for this, folks, but hello.
We were in such a great mental place there.
I cover the decades on this program. It is a nostalgia fest tonight. Don't you worry, everybody in the thread. But of course, we have a few pockets of items. So here we go. Which one's which? It's a bit like one of those doppelgangers. Which one's the original?
Well, that's the twin dilemma right there.
They've done a good job.
Yes. What I'm intrigued by is they picked the coat from really Church on Ruby Road, and they've picked the top from Space Babies. So basically, is this just because that's... I don't know. I'm trying to work out, because we're all trying to work out what is his outfit.
They even got his wax chest hair in there. Look at that.
He sings as well. They've got a little tune.
So the wax dummy is the one on the left, right?
Yeah, it's the... Let's have a look. No. It's very hard to tell sometimes, but you can see here. That's not about... I mean, I'm not knocking. Again, we've never knocked the people who make these things.
Do you know what? In 2,000 years, that head will be found somewhere. And someone will think that's how we live, just with a shooty face like that. The two shooties.
Yep.
I saw something the other day about that photograph on the left, and they were saying they've got their hands in both the same places. Is RTD impersonating the shooty waxwork, or are they both Freemasons? It was kind of doing that kind of question.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't answer. I can't look at it right now.
I know. It's just kind
of... Sorry.
It's like RTD is almost kind of like, when you're a kid, when you're pretending to pull a weapon out of your shirt, a pistol.
Yeah, like a gun.
Yeah, it's like saying to the photographer, get a good photo for me and my boy. Otherwise you're for it.
But we have had waxworks before, and if you look at that, the Tom Baker one, we all remember that one from the 5 Doctors photo shoot, don't we? He looks almost akin to the Meglos doctor, you know, with the spikes.
Yeah.
That's-
That was probably the 900th selfie that RTD had taken of himself that day.
Yeah.
yes, is he taking a shot of him or of Shooty, or is this going on his bedroom wall?
Yeah. Oh, is it going
I don't
home?
know.
The ceiling, more likely.
Yeah. Can I just ask? Has there ever been a time when the producer is around these things as much as he is? Because it's just he's everywhere, isn't
No.
he? Shooty buying a packet of cigarettes or something, he's outside the newsagents or something with a group. It's like, ugh.
Well, it's all about, now that he's made himself, an integral part of the show.
Well, Gary, you've got to remember the way it's going. He will have been showrunner for basically, give
Please
or
don't
take, a
say it.
year or two, a third of the series length. And this is the
Long time.
power and influence he's going to have forevermore. And this is where we worry, which is why tonight we're doing Deadly Assassin to get our nostalgia comfort blanket going. So,
Oh, thank God.
well, obviously, this was because, as you know, we had breaking news on Sunday about President Biden
I thought it was
retiring
good.
from the presidential race. And
Right there.
Sorry, are you about to tell me that they've shrunk Biden and put him in a bird cage?
Well, we haven't seen him. He's not been out and about.
That's Biden, and then the woman that he thought was his wife there the other day that he mistook for his wife. Did you see about that? That was classic.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Genius.
Well, the way they used to talk, I mean, they were talking about poor Mr. Biden, and it was Dr. Jill Biden that was pushing him. So you think of that Lady Macbeth master wife there, don't you, almost? But they're the stories. But of course, Doctor Who has done aging quite a lot. Good old Tom Baker in The Leisure Hive, and The Time of the Doctor, when poor Matt Smith in his last blooming episode had to be aged. I hated that, I really did. I wanted him just to be Matt Smith.
Yeah, that whole at this point in the show's history, I was really tired of the whole, go like that and shoot energy out of every orifice. And this time he's using it to shoot Daleks out of the sky. And it's like, enough. Just enough.
Well, we had some happy stuff, Rachel, to think about this week. We had Bonnie Lanford at 60.
Sorry. Was she 60 this week, was she?
She was 60 this week. And yeah, I mean, look at the difference there. I mean, when you look at the stories and you look at what she's been given, even in those two stories we had discomfort with, and then you look at Paradise Towers and that strange swimming pool monster. She's
yeah. It's a lot better back then.
she's been given a better chance.
Yeah, her writing is better this time, for sure.
Yeah.
It's
So Bonnie, well done. Happy 60th. I feel as though she's been around longer, but no, it was because she was a young child actress.
Yeah, I was going to say she was a child actress.
Yeah. So it's great to see her back. There's some good things. And, we're here. This is a reminder. We're here for the fun. We're here for the jollity, for the naughtiness. I don't know. I've put that picture up on Enric with regard to that. So let's have a laugh.
Is that the official mascot of Senssphere now?
Since I was the innocent one and I couldn't see beyond. But I mean, I haven't seen this shot before, and I looked at it and I thought, oh God, look how happy they are. They don't realize. Look at that. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't work, does it? I always thought them bird masks of the shoulder, it doesn't quite work. I mean, again, great makeup, great design. But with the Bridgerton costumes, I just think it just looks like cosplay. It looks silly. Doesn't work.
Was there a musical number in that episode that was edited out? Like in the Beatles episode? Did this episode was like they were just going to break into song in the middle of the rogue story?
I don't know if it would be I don't know. I've not heard anything. Let's have a look. So let me move on to. There you go. Did you see this one?
Oh, I would have loved that.
I've not seen that.
No, I just saw it today. I'll be honest with you.
This had to be like a fan.
Yeah, isn't that
thing.
lovely though? You almost
I
want
love
that.
that.
I mean, I've been arguing. I don't want mashups with Star Trek and all the rest of it, but I know I just love that. It's the iconography of it. It's lovely.
So this was an actual episode because I know they did
No.
some stuff.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is just a bit of fun. This is
okay.
but isn't it lovely? It's well done. So it's nice. Yeah.
It's where the master teams up with like the local farmer or the local real estate agent to trick the kids, because that was the villain in every Scooby-Doo episode.
It was. Well, we've been joined by while John just sorts out the mic and stuff. We will just say hi to. There's so many people: Divine and Dragon, SG, Lasai, Darren Bradley. Gosh, I'm trying to pick up on them. Melanie Weston, Robbie Bonham. Let's have a look. And then let's get to look at some of the quick comments, because we're going to start the time flash any second now. Lasai took on our cultural appropriation. There's nothing wrong with theatre cultural appropriation. The point of acting was being things you weren't in real life. That's what I thought. You've got over the sea. Good to see you, Dave Lynch as well. Divine and Dragon, who normally gives us resolutions to complicated problems, is on the road tomorrow, so you'll have to be writing and driving. How are you going to do that? Let's have a look.
Oh, Divining Dragon has a good point. Scooby was a dog. Shouldn't he have been able to detect Sutek sitting on top of that TARDIS?
Yeah, and that's when you almost think there's an irony in their name Shaggy, but there you go. Sorry. That could have been another
Ruh-roh, Raggy.
So let's have a look. I hate how the backdrop to the TARDIS doesn't touch the floor. Is that from that cartoon one? I think it is, actually. Yeah, says Steve. Dave Lynch, I'm Irish and really fed up of the Hollywood Irish accent. Can I cry cultural appropriation at the awful Irish accent in the Rings of Power? Dave, this is the point. Is it just on the visuals from these media lovies that it's just costume? But yeah, a lot of us would say, I mean, I get sick of hearing a Northeast accent, which always ends up being a Newcastle accent when it's not, Newcastle is very different to Middlesbrough, as you can hear now, I'm hoping. But you often get the London lovies do Northeast and just say, oh, we'll do a Geordie accent and be done with it. Yeah, where do you stop with cultural appropriation? Where do you reckon, Rachel?
Where do I reckon? When it becomes insulting, I guess you could say. I mean, yeah. I think that's the best, Artists are supposed to be versatile. Yeah, in an ideal situation, it would be great to have the ones who actually have that experience, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
And we've got Sydney Rough Diamond. That dummy's a better actor. We're talking about the Waxworks. We've got Over the Overseer. It takes me a while. I even load Tomb up the. All right, this is about their travels, I think. We've still got a bit of an echo there, so we'll see what's going on.
No, we're good.
Let's have a look.
We're good.
I'm getting it back. It's throwing me back. Yeah, Over the Overseer. We've got with technicals. Dave Lynch. The one on the right looks like Chris Rock looking at Shooty. Oh, we're talking about those photographs. Let's have a look. Dave Lynch. I visited Madame Tussauds when the Tom Baker one was there. Do you know, I've never been. I must, in a way, it didn't appeal. And even though I'm a Doctor Who fan, I didn't really. Madman in a Box. So Tom Baker, nothing more, nothing less. And then, of course, Divine and Dragon thinking Bonnie's looking younger than me and lovely. She is. She's healthy, isn't she? Let's be honest. Darren Bradley, I think it was the drowning scene that involved the story where Tom asked a stranger on the streets. Yes, Darren, when we get to that, the story is, I don't know if the panel heard it, that Tom Baker was actually, he's got hydrophobia and he was quite concerned about end of episode 3. So he popped in randomly to just a random family to sit with them watching episode 3, just to kind of confirm that everything was all right regarding how it was received. Gosh, doctor, actors taking their job seriously like that. Wow, really impressive. So let's have a look. Now I've got. Let's see if we can get. Oh, there we go, John. Let's test you out again.
Hello.
So go on then.
I'm back. Am I working? Does it work?
Well,
Yeah.
you're working.
Yeah.
And now we get an echo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet for a second. You guys carry on.
Yeah, just tell us when you want to talk, John, and I'll try and do it out. Right, okay. This is kind of slowing me up, so I'm gonna let's get moving here. Let's have a look. So let's get on with our time flash item, and let's start looking at you know what. Let's start looking at the Deadly Assassin, our beautiful comfort blanket. Okay, so let's have a look. Here we go. So, as I said, I was 8. I have to confirm that. It was autumn 76. Lovely time. And yes, I checked out the schedules, and you had grandstands, you know, the sports program for those abroad. And then you had the news, and then you were settled down to, you had the Basil Brush show, who was a puppet. He was a fox, and he was really funny. And once you heard the music at the end, when he was singing with his presenter, you knew that Doctor Who was just round the corner. And it was around 6:05. It was around 6:05 that Doctor Who would be broadcast, and it was up against Happy Days. Now, I'm saying that for a reason, because if you look at the ratings there, 11.8, 12.1, 13, 11.8. This was doing well. Now, you see, the argument goes both ways, doesn't it, panel? The argument is, oh, well, there were only a few channels. You know, that the good old argument. But then on the other way, you're going, but there were less people in the country. You know what I mean? Yes, there's more competition now, but you've got another 20 odd million people available to grab. So I'm never quite sure how far you can go with that argument.
Well, I mean, Doctor Who back then was a show that was well done, well written, and it was an entertaining show that everybody wanted to see. All quality is missing from the current incarnation.
And if you look at that, part 1 and part 4 are identical in ratings. It didn't lose people. It gained people through the middle. I found it very intriguing that it built till when it got its most gritty. I looked at the schedules for ITV, because I know we had a time flash recently where we saw one dip and everybody asked what was it for, and I didn't have an answer, and I don't like having no answers. So I checked. It was Happy Day. It was against Happy Days every week. So no difference, you know, whether the Fonz was doing something crazy one week, I don't know, but no, it was up against Happy Days. It's intriguing that, though, that part 3, the Matrix episode, the gritty episode, is the one that got the most, but nobody would know that till the time, would they? But then you could argue, as Mary Whitehouse, that the cliffhanger with the drowning bit, and we dropped by 1.2 million. I don't know. Is this all fluke?
Did she complain about that, did she?
Yes. Oh, God, big time. Big time. It actually, the argument is this started the slippery sand, and this is when Philip Hinchcliffe had to be removed later on.
I mean, I think it also depends on kind of what was on opposite it. I mean, I would think that the only reason, I mean, the fact that you have a steady increase from 1 to 2 to part 3, there had to be something else competing on when part 4 was aired. That's the only explanation.
Yeah, I had a good look. I couldn't see anything. There wasn't much on, obviously, in those days. Over the Oversea, how beautiful is the artwork? Those tapes weren't cheap, though. Makes you think how many times we've all rebought these same stories over the years. I know, I love doing this because it takes you down memory lane of every version you bought.
The one you showed on the before this, which was the audio version, which was also the cover of the Target novel, has always been my favorite, only because of that. They have the master with the the dripping blood there, what looks like dripping blood, coming off the master. I thought that was great.
It is. It's. Yeah, I know what you mean. That is to me, I would just stare at the front cover for ages before I even read pages. I just would look at that front cover. I'd sit in bed, or I had a nice little cushion on the bedroom floor, and because you couldn't watch the video, I stared at that front cover, and it kind of got the memories back. And then I went to whatever chapter I was up to. It's funny what we all did. What did everyone in the thread do when if you did read the target books first? Because I have to say, yeah, you read it, could never repeat it again. That was that. So, John, have you got this target book?
I have indeed. Yeah. And I love it.
This is one of your favorite stories, isn't it?
Oh, it's up there. It's Pyramids of Mars, and then it's Deadly Assassin for me. It's that good. I never get bored of this one. And it's one of these where I don't even ever look at my phone while I'm watching a program. I'm just in that story. And Tom Baker is just sensational in this story.
There's so many questions I've got to ask tonight about this. Now, you can see in the box here, this story is big for so many reasons. But one of my other questions that might be about, Tom Baker wanted to say, can he do Doctor Who without a companion? You know what he was after. But based on this one story, it's easily doable. And in our present era, when we were talking about Ncuti being Dr. Light for 2 of the 8 episodes and whether that was a major strategic mistake, this is the only story where there's no companion in it in the whole of the classic run.
Yeah.
And it works. Now, of course, it's the quality of Robert Holmes that does that. And of course, the quality of Tom Baker who can carry it. The two working together works. Anyway, you've got the Dangerous Assassin. It was going to be called, then it was Deadly. Some say that's tautology. And he says, I don't mind. That's why they had the Curse of Fatal Death as a Mickey take later, didn't they? So I was going to ask you, there's so many questions in a moment. See what the thread think in the panel. This was an exclusively male cast, apart from a female voice at one point. Did anyone notice? You know how RTD likes to bait you from Dot and Bubble. Did anybody notice, or are you all sexist? There they go.
I noticed.
Go on, Rachel. What were you saying?
I noticed every time I watch it.
Well, you can't have that argument now because they changed everything in New Who, didn't they? So they're female and male Time Lords now, aren't they?
They were just gestating before they changed sex, weren't they? Yeah. Does it bother you, Rachel, when you look back at stuff like this because of that?
A little bit, but it's a one-off, so it's not that bad. Doctor Who is predominantly male cast, and it's predominantly male fan base anyway. So, it does actually still appeal to its main fan base in that sense. So it is what it is. It's done anyway. So
Yeah, so there's so many things we need to discuss tonight, as well as our love of it. I can't assume. I'll assume that as far as that, but no companion. Does it work? Does it kind of say we could do this again? Never mind Dr. Light episodes. We can get rid of companions now and again and just focus on the Doctor. Because I personally think that really, really won through. Yes, it's an all-male cast. I don't think that was designed, but it just seems to, that's how it's presented. Of course, we had so much introduced about Time Lord Society, and we'll go into that later. You had the famous end of part 3, which sadly probably meant the removal of Philip Hinchcliffe in the end, our most successful era. I've mentioned Tom Baker having hydrophobia and not liking that scene and wanting to check it out with the punters. We've got the 12 regeneration cycles mentioned for the first time. We've got Robert Holmes hating the Time Lords, being pompous and godlike and thinking, right, I'm going to make you corrupt and, bent, and the CIA, irony. And of course, you've got the transit. I love this. Can I start with this last point for a second? The Master reintroduced in a transitional state, so no producers that follow are saddled with a version of the Master they may not want. How respectful is that by Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes? A respect I don't see now at all.
No.
It is, but it also doesn't take away. Sorry, John. It doesn't take away from Delgado's Master either. Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, this Master is, for me, taking Delgado aside, he's one of the most iconic for me, because just those horrible, as a kid, seeing those horrible golf ball eyes, great, and they're sort of wiggling, and it's just, and it's played so well, and I think when you were talking a few minutes ago, Brendan, about the fact that being companion light for this story,
Yeah.
it just works so well without the companion where he's up against his nemesis. You know, it just romps along this story, and I don't know if we yet have seen the Master as devious as he is in this story.
I think this is when you can release the Master from all the, I don't know, the John Sim, the this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
By putting him in this transitional state, I think it freed the writer up to just play around with the fun of it. This is Phantom of the Opera, isn't it? I mean, this is just, oh, I absolutely loved it. I have to say, I said in my preface at the beginning, and I'm being honest because I know it's controversial when you say any opinion in Doctor Who. Gabriel Wolfe, I love Sutek in Pyramids of Mars, but his voice, Peter Pratt's in this, scared me to death. All I can say is it scared me. It withers. I've been trying to impersonate it downstairs with Jamie, and I can't do it. That's because he's a good actor. The way he says things, it just wavers up and down, Rachel. I'm stunned by it.
Actually, a fun fact about Peter Pratt. I actually wondered if he had singing experience, and I went and had a look just before doing the stream, and he used to perform for Doyle Carte, which is an opera Gilbert and Sullivan theatre company. So yeah, he would have had mega singing experience, which is probably why his voice actually did that. There's just one thing I don't actually like about this version of the Master, and it's the fact that I think he's wearing a mask, isn't he? It just sort of impacts his speech a little bit. Sometimes you can't pick up what he's saying. That's the only thing I don't like about
There
it.
were one or two things I didn't understand. It was one of those classic things. As a kid, all I got across was this man is absolutely scary as hell. but I didn't know exactly what he said all the time. But by God, I mean, you know, my opening credits, predictable as ever, Doctor, and you just hear that withering, predictable as ever, Doctor, and then Castellan, and oh my God, I tell you what, it did shivers on the spine, and I can't exaggerate about all Doctor Who stories, but this one, it's just I'd love to impersonate his voice. It is class.
And also, I want to say this is one of my favourite Fourth Doctor stories for lines, because he looks at the Master. I think it's this story, and he says, "You would delay an execution to pull the wings off a fly," you know, and it is just perfect. Tom nails it when he says that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I kind of agree with John in that, Delgado aside, because you have to put him in kind of his own category. This is my favorite depiction of the Master, bar none. And I don't think Delgado would have worked with, say, Tom Baker. The styles and the tone are just too different. This kind of gothic, as you said, Phantom of the Opera, fit into the style of this era perfectly. I think that the one line that imprinted itself on my brain for all time when I first heard it is when the Master holds up his hands and he says, you know, what does he say? He says, "My hate is all I have. How else could I, you know, endure this pain?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you realize that hate is literally the only thing that is keeping him going, and that has stuck with me forever.
Yeah, I mean, since we're on the Master, I was trying to think what, apart from the voice and of course that skeletal burnt look he has, it was the shrinking, because look, everybody in the thread and all the panelists know we've all joined Doctor Who at different points. I hadn't seen any of the the compression of any characters. I hadn't seen Terror of the Autons by this point. I joined with Sea Devils, and I saw him in Frontier in Space. You didn't see it, so I just saw him as oh gosh, he's that scary one who was on the cliffs with the Daleks. And then to see him in this state, and then to discover that he can shrink you into action men. I mean, that's.
And I did like the explanation for his condition that was in the Target book, which is that the Daleks, after Frontier in Space, had caught up with him, you know, for betraying them, and tried to exterminate him or whatever, but left him in this shape. I thought that was a very nice piece of connective tissue from Terrence Dicks in the novel.
Which didn't need to be done, but he did, and sometimes he did race through. But yes, he now and again he did do that. I mean, I mean, this is just class to me now. And the way they did the levels, you were in the room with the Matrix with Engin and Spandrel, but then suddenly the camera just goes down and you just edit down, and then you're in the basement.
Yeah.
And you've got the Dudley Simpson xylophone going away there, ding doo doo doo, and it's just creepy as hell. I was always scared, and I was shocked every time I watched Deadly Assassin. I'm always shocked that you only see, the camera gallery where one of the cameramen was killed. You only see that for a moment, but in my memory, the shadows up there is scary. It's just the shadows in this, and the basement, and the shadows, and the fact that he pretended he was dead when he wasn't. It's. I think it is. I'm going to say it now. It's probably my favorite Master story.
Yeah, it's a cracker, isn't it? It really is. And I love the ending as well, where he's in the clock face and he's. And he's laughing as it goes away. Yeah,
there we go.
This is although I've always thought that figure right there looks kind of weird. It almost looks like he's starting to kind of heal himself almost a little bit.
Yeah.
But
can I ask a question? Which like makeup wise version of this Master do we prefer? Do we prefer the Pratt version, or do we prefer the Beavers version?
Did you know? There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, to answer your question, since I had the slide ready, I prefer the one before.
Okay.
But I'm sure as an actor, I may be acting against that one, so you can see the mouth moving, I think.
Yeah, the face in this one is too human.
I prefer this one, but that's because I my thing about mannequins and things like that. So this one's easier for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in it to get absolutely scared out of your wits before bed, Rachel, it's this one.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be the case. When I did my review of Spearhead from Space, I had nightmares all over again, and I've got Rose next, and I'm dreading it.
She picks them. Well, it's therapy. What you're doing therapy on yourself, aren't you? Really?
Just one more Tron story to go after that.
Well, let's see. There's some the threads alive and well on the Master, so let's just catch up with some of them. I put up SG's loves the flea bitings line. That one was a good one, wasn't it? Hey B agrees he was so scary as the Master. Yes, very Phantom of the Opera. Doctor Who does that, and Robert Holmes did it again in Talons of Wen-Chi-An. That was Phantom of the Opera as well. He really does that. Oh, do it every week. We're having debates, aren't we, at the moment about whether Disney pulls out and do we need the money. Do Talons of Wen-Chi-An every week. Do Deadly Assassin every week. Now, I'm asking for high caliber writing, but do the Phantom of the Opera. Do body horror, please. Yeah. Over the Overseer, Jeffrey Beavers is my favorite Master. Right, you were there with Rachel on that one. I realize he's only on audio, but his voice is so. No, I agree. Jeffrey Beavers' voice is brilliant in Keeper of Traken. I agree with you. Peter Pratt's in this one scared me to death, but I liked Jeffrey Beavers as well. I did.
I would say Pratt.
This one scares me more compared to the Beavers Master.
Yeah,
I would say Pratt. I do like the Big Finish Beavers, and I do like Master is a story I love from Big Finish. Yeah. Jeffrey Beavers is just fantastic in that and shows his full range. And it's not a bad second place to have, is it? Jeffrey Beavers, I think for me, it's how lucky we were to get them in these roles, because these are sinister masters, aren't they?
Yes, very
much. By the time I first saw Keeper of Traken, I'd already seen this like 50 times, because this was on like rotation in the US like constantly. So this is the version of this Master that had already imprinted in my head. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because now what would happen, like the Master being back in it, they would have already teased it a few days before in a trailer. So instead of keeping it a surprise, they would have teased it so to get you to watch it. You know.
The other thing, John, that worries me when I really look back at this, if you look at that face there and the skeletal, you got that in the last attack, the sound of the drums and that. You know, and he did that quick X-ray shot of his skeleton, and you almost think you're trying to just
recapture it, but you're not
into stuff. Yeah. Please don't do that, because he wasn't skeletal. He was John Sim. Yeah. I've got over the overseer here. The Deadly Assassin Master almost looks like a repainted Belial from Death to the Daleks. Yeah. They did recycle. This one looks like it's different, but I know what you mean. And I liked Belial as well. I like the fact that it was a twist because he was a friendly alien. I loved that. I was going to ask a real key question on the Master. It'll have to come back as I just do a bit more of the thread. It was a really belter. The hate holding him literally together in a constant state of non-regeneration, meaning his own will keeps him in agony so he can exist. It's a bit Omega. Yeah, you know, his willpower in Three Doctors, isn't it? It's a bit Omega. In this case, it's hate that keeps you going. Let's have a look at some of our other friends here. Robbie Bonham, my first live memory was Destiny of the Daleks. It's not a bad place to start, though. I love this part 2 with just Tom Baker and Davros kicking off. I love that.
I've always
stand off with the Daleks.
Yeah, I've always wondered as well, Brendan. Would the Delgado Master would he have been as unhinged as this? Because, you know, this is a master that he was literally prepared to wipe out not just Gallifrey, but pretty much the bulk of the universe to basically make sure that he survived and lived. Now, would the Delgado Master have gone that far, or was it because of what's happened to him now that's caused this extra level of insanity that's pushed him to that level?
Yeah, pain, I suppose. We've got I love the thread tonight. They're thinking up theories as we go. We've got clever people in our thread because we always have theories and ways around it. The Quiet says, was he slowly regenerating by the time we saw him in the grandfather clock? Therefore, his face has changed. Now, my question was, because we all were going mad about Sutekh being destroyed by RTD so willfully. Okay, we loved Pyramids of Mars and that's Sutekh. And actually, when you look back, Sutekh, his threat is his voice and his actual threat. He never moves, really. And in this one, the Master never really, really moves. He moves slowly. He's in the shadows. He sits, but he is scary. And I think sometimes, you know, Rachel, I'm always talking about actors being more confined and you get more out of them. We keep saying this about, we hope Shooty can have a still scene maybe. These two villains, Sutekh from Pyramids and this Master, I think work because they're hardly mobile.
Oh, they do work, and they do that with the Beavis one as well. Beavis one as well. I'm so sorry. Right, retake.
Send your memes to SenSphere, care of.
I'll put the Scooby-Doo back up. She's on cartoons tonight.
Yeah, I'm so all right. I'm sorry. Right, okay. So they tried doing that with that Master. So yeah, it does work, particularly for evil characters, you know, because they have the power anyway in the scene. You know, every scene that they're in, they have the power, so it does actually work. Yeah.
But I love the big finish, how they got round Eric Roberts, and they basically said when he fell into that Eye of Harmony, it basically turned him back into this, which is why you got Beavers in Big Finish, which is in Dust Breeding, I think it was, which is clever, and I love all of that Doctor Who stuff. It's great, you know. But I'd love to see this version back on the telly someday. You know, it would be great to see.
We've got the same old problem, John, haven't we? Which is, how will it be written?
Yeah, very good point.
That's the problem. Mad McCam, hiya. What was Sutekh thinking in this story? Watching from his... No, I've written that in some of my notes, actually, that Sutekh was already sitting on the TARDIS in Deadly Assassin. And I think when we were all taking the mick after Empire of Death, I think we said it on our stream, I threw in and said, hold on a minute. The Time Lords who were scanning the TARDIS and they put it in that pen, you know, didn't they? They didn't spot that there was a big thing on the top. It was a very bad scanner. I mean, that Castellan Spandrel should be sacked.
RTD would never do this, because just like he did with Davros, if he did this version of the Master, he wouldn't do it because it would be associating people who have acne with being evil.
Oh yes,
And
sorry,
he would never want to create a correlation between having like bad acne on your face with being an evil person. So it would
Now,
never happen.
I'm going to right thread. You heard this from me first. We're going to blame Gary tonight because Gary seems to want a certain item to come up now as we compare. So for a moment, obviously we're doing Deadly Assassin. That's our time flash. But just to kind of take a curveball, we will actually compare it to now because actually we might appreciate Deadly Assassin more or less. So can we all get our emotional, intelligent antenna on again? We are embodying the 15th Doctor. We're post-therapy. So here we go. Yep.
Intelligence has nothing to do with this current era, emotional or otherwise.
It's your fault, Barry. He's trying to. Have you noticed he's distracting us because he's basically right. Here we go then. So it's another way of us reviewing key scenes from Deadly Assassin. So here's the first one, which actually I thought is the very opening credits almost really. Yeah. Which when we had the first ever narration from the actual Doctor in Classic Who. And of course, it was very Star Wars. And of course, we had that scroll and that amazing Tom Baker velvety voice, so powerful. It was lovely. How would the Shooty Doctor do this?
Yeah, I would say you would start it with, "Oh, babes, through the millennia."
I wondered if he'd sing this.
No, he'd started out. You'd hear this voice like it'd start with, "Oh, honey, have I got a story for you?"
Yeah,
through the millennia. Yeah.
Yes, I'm not going to try and sing because we know that I can't, but I can just imagine him try and do some routine to this. The babes. I mean, this is. I think the thread do like us doing this because everybody goes off it. Let's have a look. Hey B, so perfect. He'd lay a baby gap egg. Lisa, let's have a look. What would Shooty's Doctor do? The answer is always the same: cry. Or save that one. Lisa, you've peaked early. Mad McCam, hi Castellan babes, you're looking good. Are you seeing anyone? Wink, wink, hump, hump. We've got lots of cry.
More like
it's not even that. It's not even that. You could, if you closed your eyes and listened just to Tom's narration, it just feels epic. It feels mythological, the way that he talks.
Yes.
I can't even begin to imagine what this would say, just the sound of it with Shooty reading it. It would just be like a flat, I mean, it would be, there's no possibility it would get anywhere near the power of Tom Baker reading this.
Do you know, I could do a whole show with this, Gary, because I have to say it gets me laughing.
Face the most dangerous crisis in their long history. Ooh, babes.
Shooty's Doctor would have put the sash of Rassilon on and said, "Accessorize, honey," before snogging the president.
And you know what? Jumping ahead a little bit, you know where he's sketching in the courtroom or whatever?
Yeah.
He'd be sketching and then he'd look over at one and one would look back and he'd just wink at him.
I mean, maybe he'd wrap it.
We see people are saying he'd snog the president, he'd snog the master. The point is, he does seem to like people close to death, doesn't he? And we've seen that in Boom. Hey B, he'd start singing a Judy Garland song on Annie thought. Oh, we've got our musical expert here, Rachel, with those huge chiclets.
Wow.
Babes, I know a great skin consultant. That's a good one from Dave Lynch. Well done. Well, we've only just started, so let's have another look at this one. What would happen here then, do you reckon? So this one, if I just show you a bit more closely, is the Doctor's still in the TARDIS. he's having a nightmare, or as you know, a premonition or something. As we know, the Matrix is being beamed into his head, but he can see some strange distorted Time Lords in the Panopticon. It freaks him out. He sees the president shot at, and he kind of sees himself shooting. What would the shooty doctor do in this scenario, do you reckon?
He would run.
Yeah,
He?
100%.
Run.
Yeah, he wouldn't pick up the gun. He'd do that what he did in the hall during the finale. He would just kind of, you know, go into like a little, you know, fetal position.
Yes.
You know, up in the gallery and be panicked.
Do you know one thing that hasn't been said yet? I'm going to put for this one is, since this is the very beginning of the episode, and we have had 2 Dr. Light episodes, I think Shooty would say, I'm not going to be in this story. I'll leave it to somebody else to solve because it looks a bit hard. So I think this would be a Dr. Light episode.
He'd probably try and step on the viewfinder.
Yeah.
The little thing, you know. That would be his idea of a fairy circle.
I think you might see him in his bed scene, and he might just wet the bed. I think this is what happens. He has a nightmare, wakes up, cries, and moves on and thinks,
well, he would be in this scene in his pants, wouldn't he? So that would probably link with what you were just saying.
RTD would have had Mrs. Floods in it. We can easily see Gatra being terrified and cowering somewhere in the corner. That's agreeing with our panel. Oh, yeah, the Mad McCam sod this, grab kilt and head down the disco. I want an easier time than this. Over the overseer, Shooty's doctor would have taken Ruby with him on this story and would have shot her.
No, here's the thing. I you know what? I keep forgetting about the Christmas special because for the most part,
dare you?
Until you make me, I usually forget about it. But he would do, you know, what did he do with that Goblin King to distract? He hopped up on the little, you know, thing and started singing. So that's what he'd do. He would just, you know, hop up on the little wall there, and to distract the assassin, he would just start, you know, singing up in the gallery.
Yeah, I mean, I think this item's
My
got
name
legs.
is the doctor, and I've got to say, please don't shoot, or I'll run away. Something like that.
Me and Gary are going to make a hit record. And
Right, said Fred, shaking his little touch on the catwalk. Yeah.
So there you go. Do you know, we've got more on this one, I tell you. So now I'll let John come in first, because John, you referenced this about underwear. I mean, he was in his long johns there. I don't think the Shooty doctor would be found disrobed with that much on.
No, he wouldn't. He would. The robe would be gone.
Yeah,
and it would just be a pants and boots, probably, wouldn't it?
Specifically, Y fronts.
Yeah, and the Chancellor Guards would literally be he'd be looking at him going, "Ooh."
And he'll say, "Don't worry, it will ride up with wear."
Yeah.
He'd be wearing that metal bra that he wore to the awards show.
Yeah. Like, you can come with me, and you can come with me.
Yeah, one at a time, lads. Mike Disney, those Time Lord outfits would make for a super dance routine. Oh, can you imagine it? Like the Devil's Cord meets Deadly Assassin. Get Shirley Ballas back. Rachel will agree to that. I better not have said that.
I would, actually, because, you know, at the end of the day, that was the highlight of the episode for me, was the Strictly Dancers.
What about this one then? Now, this is part 3. And as you know, most of the episode, or if not all really, is just in the Matrix. It's gritty. I always feel hot when I watch it, as if they've really delivered, as if you're somewhere tropical. You get the sound of that beautiful sound of the rocks and his boots. I love that sound. Breaking the dinosaur egg, if that's what it is, being shot in the arm and the leg, making a poison and little Janus thorn. Isn't that funny? Ironically, the week before he has Face of Evil, he's got his little Janus thorn there.
Yeah.
And look how dirty his fingers are. I mean, I just want to point out, look how dirty this doctor's fingers are.
Now, you know what? He would run out. One bit I know specifically is, you know, in the scene where he's hiding from Goth and the spider comes down in front of him, Shooty would run out from that and he'd go, "Oh, spider babe, spider!"
No,
And
you
he
know
goes,
what?
"Oh, I'm dirty. I'm dirty."
There wouldn't no, there wouldn't be any of this. The
No.
whole Matrix thing for Shooty would take place in that gay dance club that Ruby first saw him in, and you know, he would just be. It would all take place there.
He'd see the clown in the bathroom.
Oh, yes.
There wouldn't be the hunter. There wouldn't be you know, the clown. There'd be that snowman.
No, I think it would be RTD, and it would just look back at him going, "You are by far the finest actor this country has ever produced."
Oh, vibes.
I just thought you'd never get the Ncuti Gatwa 15th Doctor with his nails dirty.
He'd need a nail brush.
Yeah. And I don't think he'd go in that water either, because it's like you need the right clothing for the water. I don't think he'd have gone into wading into the water, especially if it's muddy and cloudy. Over the Overseer, even trapped in the Matrix, Ncuti would conjure a digital ruby and use it as a human shield.
There you go.
There you go. The respect for
Probably
this
so.
Doctor knows no bounds. And then the final one there actually links to the modern day anyway. Actually, when you look at the Master's gun in episode 4, to be quite honest, it's Rogue's gun. And if Ncuti as Doctor is a size queen, you can see why he went with Rogue. Why didn't he go with the Master then? Because look, it's a big chunky gun, that, I tell you.
I don't know. We should ask Tom Baker, shouldn't we?
Well, he was playing asexual, of course. Good old Tom.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah,
about
you know,
that.
he's
Yeah.
stuck with the script.
Yeah.
So, but actually, if you do look at the gun, they do look very similar, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Very good there. There you go. I've joined 50 years up for you folks there. So what would Ncuti Doctors do? We'll have to think of something new. It's either sing, cry,
You saying Rogue's a sequel, Brendan? Is that what you're saying? Rogue's a sequel to Deadly Assassin?
Also,
Oh,
what
no,
Shooty
don't give him ideas.
what Shooty's doctor would do is he would spend all of his time finding somebody else to solve the problem because he'd be completely incapable of doing it himself.
Yeah, I'd go to Mel.
Yeah.
So, how dare we do that? So there we go. Shall we start with one big question though? The Deadly Assassin and the Time Lords, and seeing the Time Lords, you saw a lot more about them. War games, they were kind of mentioned, and at the end they delivered a sentence. And again, Bernard Horsfall. And then you saw them in the Three Doctors when they were basically just stressed out and desperate. And yeah, not much happened there really with them, apart from they just knew that to break some first law of time. And then you got to see them here. So do you think this has become the problem for Doctor Who now that Robert Holmes knew what he was doing? But since then, because he decided to do that about turn and make them corrupt rather than pompous, godlike, every other Doctor Who writer thinks, I'll do the Time Lords and I'll just have them commit another crime and the Dark Sea Scrolls and this, that, and the other. And this.
Yeah.
And in the end, I'm actually bored with them.
I mean, for me, I always wanted to get back the War Games Time Lords, you know, where they're this all powerful, where they can just stare at a person and, you know, injure them. You know, I loved all of that telepathic Time Lord. I did like the Three Doctors version, but they really sort of twisted it on this one to say they were a bunch of arguing, you know, politicians, basically, weren't they? Which was well done. I don't think since this, the Time Lords were done well. They haven't been done to this level since, really.
What about what Lee Sy says here, Gary? I liked the more eccentric Time Lords in Deadly Assassin, like their civilization is decaying and less than perfect. And what I would say, Gary, is do it once. The trouble is when you go back and go back. Arc of Infinity, okay. 5 Doctors maybe gets away with it, but then after that, I just think I'm out.
Well, okay. So just a couple of thoughts. First of all, about the story in general. I mean, I think that had this been the only Doctor Who story that Robert Holmes ever wrote, I still think his place in the Doctor Who writing pantheon would have been assured. because this is just such an amazing story. And, you know, this story sits at almost the dead center of the classic series. As much time had to the beginning and to when it ended in 89. So in many respects, I think this story is like the fulcrum of the entire original run. It affects every story that comes after. So I think that, and as you said, Brendan, before this, there wasn't much canon. If you think in War Games that you showed 3 Time Lords, one of whom, like Goth, was played by Bernard Horsfall. So for the fan theory is that one of the 3 Time Lords in the War Games was Goth. And then after that, what did we get? We got the bowler-hatted Time Lord that appeared at the beginning of Terror of the Autons. We see a couple of more Time Lords kind of at the beginning of Colony in Space, who are saying, well, the Master stole this. 3 Doctors, again, only a couple. The one single Time Lord who appears at the beginning of Genesis and sends him on the mission. So really, I don't think that there'd been, in many ways, there hadn't been enough canon, so to speak, established to really say that, well, Robert Holmes destroyed canon, because when you think about the very minimal scattered appearances of the Time Lords up to this point, nothing had really been established. And to the point that you put up on screen, I think it would be very, well, you have 2 explanations. One is that those Time Lords we were seeing at the height of their power, and now this is much further on, because at some point somebody says to the Doctor, weren't you expelled or whatever? So even what happened, you know, to the Doctor may have been, you know, the exile may have been far in Gallifrey's past. But why should we assume, like, just if we like walk down the street for 5 minutes and we assume that the few people we might see would be representative of the whole planet, you know, that just doesn't, you know, make sense. So I think it's just fan assumption to say that those few scattered appearances that we'd seen of the Time Lords up to that point were completely representative of every person on the planet and their societal structure, their cultural structure, everything. So I think this is a remarkably valid interpretation. And you know what? Honestly, the last thing I'll say for right now, I think with this story, honestly, the Time Lords to me became interesting. It became better drama. Distant, unknowable, godlike beings are boring on television. This is a much more, as far as drama goes, this is a much better interpretation.
Yeah.
It was interesting because there's a quote, I think it was Alien, I'm trying to get the text up that I was sent, where one of our friends and followers was saying that Verity Lambert said, really, she's not interested in going to see the Time Lords. The Time Lords really should remain mysterious. Now, I can't put words in Verity Lambert's mouth, but I dare say she was good enough to see a good story and just do it. Robert Holmes's Deadly Assassin is a damn good story at introducing the Time Lords properly. My snag is, as I've got on the screen there, as soon as you'd had the Deadly Assassin and everybody thought, oh, look, he's set up a whole world, we must revisit again Invasion of Time. And it's almost the same set, but it's not. It's not the same story. It looks cheap and nasty. Yes, you've got Baruza. Yes, you've got various other ones. They're using some of the same outfits, but it's just not the same. As soon as they saw this work, they wanted to go back again, and then it was wrecked.
I think the overuse really came in the J&T era, because the quality of the stories featuring the Time Lords weren't as good. Yet Arc of Infinity, I think 5 Doctors actually had a really valid reason for going back to Gallifrey, so I'm fine with that. But just a lot of the overuse, you know, then you have a whole season based in Gallifrey and Trial of a Time Lord. Thankfully and wisely, the entire Sylvester McCoy era decided just to push it off to the side, which I think was absolutely the right decision. It's the same with the Weeping Angels. if the quality of the story is fine, it's good, like Blink. But then over time, when you use them, you drive them into the ground, where by the time of Matt Smith's finale, the Weeping Angels are reduced to hands coming out of the ground and grabbing your ankle. It's not so much that the concept it's bad, is whether it's how you treat it and you overuse it enough and just run it into the ground.
Yeah. Well, Lasai says they are overdone as evil now. They should be a bit more like the Vulcans, detached and clinical, not overly malevolent. This is what I mean. Robert Holmes, wisely, maybe, because one Gary over there made them more interesting. The trouble is they've become one-dimensional again. So instead of being godlike, they're now just evil, Machiavellian, corrupt.
Yeah.
And the layers aren't there. That's the thing. And of course, now people have added other things like they're all gender fluid and all the rest of it. The Quiet One says, is it a satire on the British Empire? I thought it was a bit of a Mickey take of the CIA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, and it was from the movie, Rachel. What was it? The
Manchurian
Candidate, wasn't it? Sorry,
Yeah.
Rachel.
Oh, yeah. Can I say something as perhaps the youngest person on this panel? This is why I've not really added a lot of two-penneth to this particular question, because for me, I've watched a lot of the Time Lord stories, but out of order. So it's not, to me, it's not that problematic. But when you get to New Who, I think it was intriguing and perhaps the best decision to get rid of them in the Time War. Bringing them back, what was it, series 3 they brought them back, I think it was, with Martha and that. I didn't like that. Yeah, I just they should be godlike
Yeah.
I can't get the words out, like you said, that's what they should be. And yeah, a bit of a political stomping ground, I guess you could say, as well, because there's hierarchy and all of that, but it's a free-for-all currently in the new series. So
I feel as though that. Sorry, Rich. I feel as though that this is one of those artistic truths out there. You've seen it in comedy. You've seen it with Minder, Indoors. You don't see a certain character. They're always mentioned, but you don't see them. And I think the Time Lords and Gallifrey overall should have maybe been mentioned and not seen. Robert Holmes' story is an exception because it really lands stuff. But I have to say, surely, please, can the egos of all the writers who follow, you know that Robert Holmes will have done so much world building there behind the scenes before he really wrote the script.
Yes.
And can every other writer please have the same decency before they just go, right, I'm just going to quickly use a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that. We've got the costumes in the cupboard. Great. Off we go. No. This cleverly at so many levels, it very quickly. I mean, by the end of part 1, I knew all about the Time Lord chapters and I accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew about the Matrix. I knew about the presidential thing, the panopticon. So many words have been thrown at me that I'd never seen before. And I accepted them because the dialogue, or should I say the action with the dialogue, just carried me through.
Right.
You learned so much in one episode, right, about the Time Lords, that you don't really need any other episode with them, do you? Really, at this point, just throwing that out there.
For the classic series, after this story, the only stories that I would have used the Time Lords in, I am going to say Invasion of Time only because that's a personal preference. I happen to really like that story, and the 5 Doctors. Those are the only 2 times I would have kept the, Gallifrey back, and then I would bin all the other Gallifrey stories in the classic series other than those 2.
And do you know what, Gary? I was going to say, sort of linking in there as well, I get a bit tired now of, you've got to kill them off, bring them back, kill them off again.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You park them. You could easily do something like, not the Daleks, but there's another race out there that are now rivaling the Time Lords in power. And that keeps them in the background because they're fighting this other battle where the Doctor's going about his business, and you could jump into it every now and again, but you don't have to link the 2 together necessarily. And I think the chat and what Rachel was saying as well, I agree. I've always found the Time Lords were better when there was that shade of grey about them. They weren't necessarily good, they weren't necessarily evil, but they were looking after themselves, first of all, making sure their own rules fitted. But I think certainly RTD, when he did it, he was looking purely, he'd watched Deadly Assassin and then he'd gone, yeah, well, I watched Trial of a Time Lord. They were clearly evil in Trial of a Time Lord, so I'm going to make them evil in the End of Time. That's kind of where he went with it, and it's kind of followed suit, isn't it? Really, since then.
Yeah,
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you about the whole back and forth, like the way that it's been done in the new series. Because if you get to the point where even people who still follow the show, are going, wait a minute, are the Time Lords back, or did they get wiped out, or are they still dead? When you get to that point that even people who watch the show don't know whether or not they're still around this week, you know that it needs to be a good long rest. But let me ask something that just occurred to me that I want to ask the three of you, and of course the chat. Do you think, though, as an extension of what you're all saying about the Time Lords, do you think then that it was a mistake to give the Doctor a Time Lord companion?
It was an interesting twist. It was an interesting twist they went with at the time. And I love Romana to bits.
No, of course, but I mean conceptually, considering that everybody's saying that they beat the Time Lords.
Well, if you think one of the notable things about The Deadly Assassin is it's the first classic Doctor Who story with no human characters.
Yeah.
First one. So to answer your question, Gary, in a way, again, if it's well written, it can be carried without having human characters in it, it seems to me. And so therefore it kind of half answers your question that we could have had an alien companion.
David Mullen, great comment that he just put in the chat.
Let me just have a look.
I think Romana works, and she doesn't, because she's just as smart as the Doctor, and it's a bit that sort of like Liz Shaw and the Third Doctor sort of thing in that respect. But
yeah, and this is where Invasion of Time kind of leaned in, David Mullen, to I can never say them. I say the Shobogans, I say this, I say that. Basically, the outliers. Yes, there's more to society than just those academic mob. I agree, David Mullen. And of course, yes, in a 4-part story, Robert Holmes wasn't going to do a world building. There's the underclass, there's the working class, there's this, there's that, there's this. That's the school they go to. This is, I mean, for God's sake, that would have been boring as hell. Yes, he went for the more political element of it, where the power was. We learned a few other bits, but
I mean, this is why I like Gallifrey from Big Finish, because Gallifrey, it goes into a lot more interesting things that they haven't been able to do on the TV series. They flesh out a lot of characters there, and if anyone hasn't listened to it, give it a try, because I think it's great. But I think you're right, Brendan. I think you can't do that in a story, because again, you leave it to your own imagination. Because I always thought in my head, well, all we ever see is Gallifrey, but surely they've got colonies on other planets here, there, and everywhere, because they're meant to be this all-powerful species. So you'd think that they would have outposts at other places as well, So
this is where there's
why.
Sorry,
really
Gary.
quickly, I just wanted to say that's why, as much as the story is kind of criticized, that's why script-wise, Underworld is so interesting, because you do find out about the Time Lords, but without the Time Lords being in it. You find out about the incident that caused them to be basically kind of standoffish and not so interfering. So, like I said, you do learn about the Time Lords, but without being mired in another Gallifrey story.
And Gary, you're right. I love all of that, and again, you don't need to have it on the TV, but they just place that little thing in your mind, and your mind goes into overdrive.
That's why Sadako 24, it's a good point, because I loved their reference in State of Decay. Yes, you built the mythos of the Time Lords and how they'd fought the vampires before. Yes, I agree with you. You could call out that.
Well, to be fair, Brendan, I mean, in Arc of Infinity, the Time Lords have they've ended up living in a travel hotel, haven't they?
Arc of Infinity was just really misconceived. I kind of wish that story had not been done, because it did not do Gallifrey any favors.
Now, Now, I will get back to Deadly Assassin proper, folks. Don't you worry. But I just want to throw in, as soon as you had the Time Lords and you started doing this, that, and the other, you can see we've had the free reign. We've got Tecton. We've got the idea that maybe the Doctor isn't even a Time Lord. Isn't it funny that Chris Chibnall obviously didn't want to use the CIA? Maybe he thought it was corny, or maybe too American. So what he did is he went for the Division. And of course, that brought in Fugitive Doctor. And of course, all that blather. I'm not going to go there, but I'm just saying, as soon as you introduce a whole world, well, as I really will say Robert Holmes did, it means lazier writers have a shortcut to do and play and plunder and trespass and vandalize. But where I wanted to go with this, just to finish off, is the Matrix. Now, the Matrix is Robert Holmes's invention. He didn't write the Raw Games. He didn't write Three Doctors, but this was his invention. And it's a holodeck, as Jamie keeps telling me. It's Doctor Who's holodeck in a way. Now, just before you say, no, it's not. You've got Robert Holmes, as you know, was writing Trial of a Time Lord's Climax. Right. But then obviously things, he died and things went and changed. Now, we didn't get the version that he was going to do. So when we see the Matrix in a Trial of a Time Lord, I'm not satisfied. We're in Stoke Potteries. We're in Quicksand. We've got Mr. Popplewick. It all goes a little bit. I'm thinking, is this what he really was going to do, Robert Holmes? And then, of course, you've got the Matrix where Tegan was in there she was in Holland, wasn't she? And Peter Davison popped in there and Omega popped in there. And, and again, I'll say with the Trial of a Time Lord, you had the keeper of the Matrix but anyone can walk in. The Master seems to get in that Matrix like as quick as a cat flap.
That was that actually, by the way, that picture is how I looked whenever I tried to watch a Jodie episode.
She can't cope with all this canon being broken. So, the point is the Matrix has now become the cosmic cat flap. That's the problem. Everybody
here's the thing about that, Brendan. Perfectly that you brought this up with the Division and all of that. Honestly, because I didn't watch most of her second season. I didn't watch any of Flux. Didn't watch the Sea Devils thing. I did watch her finale. So when they're talking about the Division, all of that, I honestly was sitting there just going, who cares?
Yeah.
Who in the general public just trying to find something that's entertaining is going to care about this huge deep dive into these concepts that it's almost the creators think that the concepts are just entertaining by themselves. They're not. They have to be in service to an engaging story. Their background details. When you bring all these background details that belong in some kind of like fan-made index of all like Doctor Who chronologies or whatever, when you take that and foreground it and make it like the key to your plot, it's boring.
And isn't it, look, is there a misunderstanding from how Robert Holmes introduced the Matrix and how it was well described in the dialogue? All these kind of, it was quite a nice idea, wasn't it? It was all the kind of memories of every Time Lord before they died. And they can be used to project the future and predict and stuff like that. And because they were like the cosmic kind of, I thought the Time Lords were being pitched almost like guardians of the universe. They were kind of watching like referees what goes on, and they could sometimes project the future through using the Matrix. And then you get the Matrix is just somewhere where you go and run to. Because would you say that episode 3 of Deadly Assassin was so successful in how it delivered this other world that actually now we see it's a place where you go and run into and you go and, have adventures in it. It's become cheaper and it's actually become misunderstood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just got to say, Brendan, just by the way, my stress level is increasing by the minute with this picture.
There you go.
The screen. Thank you.
Me instead.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sorry to the thread for doing that, but I did say in my thumbnail that, yes, we could just spend 2 hours saying Deadly Assassin, very good, and we give it a round of applause and we go home. The point is, as you know, Sensephere asks questions. I don't give anybody an easy 10 out of 10. And I do think with every good story in Doctor Who, you're then going to get its twin rubbish one, because it's a shame. You know, for every Pyramid of Mars, you're going to have an Empire of Death now, it seems. And that's the snag. So as Doctor Who fans, do we have to have a kind of, you know, bulletproof vest on and go, right, I love Deadly Assassin, but that means I'm going to get Timeless Child. I'm going to get, sorry, Gary, Invasion of Time.
Well,
you know,
no. Well, I mean, if we're contrasting classic to what we're getting now, I think what we're getting now is purely because they're out of ideas. I mean, how many times have we said that every single episode this season was a ripoff or a lifting of a concept from either Classic Who or earlier New Who or Star Wars or whatever? It's not because they honestly think that they can find some interesting new angle about the Time Lords or about Sutekh. It's just because they're out of gas creatively.
I'm actually at a point now where I think they're actually just using AI to help them write the scripts now, and they're using ChatGPT and they're going, give me a finale for the Doctor Who season 1, and it goes,
they'll jump onto Twitter and ask Grok as well, wouldn't they?
Exactly, and go, Grok has said to put a big dog on top of a TARDIS. Yep, we'll go with that. Sign it off. Get the Russians.
Grok has said the fans don't like this, so we'll do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've got...
Brendan, let me ask you. To follow up from the Sunday show, where we were coming up, it's like, how would we have restructured the season to do it better? If we were given like these last 12 episodes to do, and like we as the panel are getting together in a room and we're plotting out the whole season, do you think we'd start by saying we're not even going to mention Gallifrey?
I think if you're going to do a proper reboot, you'd go gently. Wasn't the mistake in the movie that we started with the Time Lords, the Gallifrey, the Daleks, the Extermination, the Master, the Regeneration? Wasn't that the problem with it, really, in retrospect?
I just think you can do a throwaway line and you can literally say something like a signal to the TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, oh, they are alive. They did make it, you know, and then move on. Because surely at this point now, the Doctor's got to be fed up. He don't want to find his home anymore because he's found it how many times. He shouldn't be pining for the fact they've gone when they haven't gone. So
I'm not obsessed with canon, but I do have problems when the series changes little things. So, for example, there was a horrible scene when he said at the end of the Hand of Fear, Sarah, I've been called back to Gallifrey. No non-Gallifreyans can be on Gallifrey. Sorry, I'm going to have to say goodbye. And to me, as a little kid, to say goodbye to Sarah Jane, and the reason was because Gallifrey has a rule against immigrants. So, that was the thing. It was anti-foreigner. And then to have Invasion of Time, you have Leela, and then Arc of Infinity, Nyssa. And all of a sudden you're going, oh, you've ruined that, because you either have a rule or you don't. Let's be honest with you. Obviously, Gallifrey is much more open to foreigners now, I think is what we're saying. But we lost Sarah Jane as a plot point because of
I honestly can't see how Sarah would have fit into this story. No, I think she would have been totally superfluous to requirements, and the story is more powerful because the Doctor is on his own without any kind of support. But I mean, I can't. I mean, she would have been standing around. She would not work in this story. Leela wouldn't either in this story.
You think they'd lock her up anyway, wouldn't you? Logically, she'd spend time in a cell for the story. But I think, it was interesting because wasn't it one of the ideas that if Doctor Who hadn't been cancelled in 89, that in 90 they were going to write Ace out of the story, but she was going to join the Time Lord Academy. That's what the Doctor wanted her to do. So they were going to go that route. So
you're in, for one good story, you create canon, really. As somebody said to me in response to my thumbnail, it's not canon-busting Deadly Assassin, it's canon sculpting. And I agree. Yeah. Now, Babette Bombshell, I've had on the screen for a while now. We can't ignore you. Lovely name. Disclosing the Time Lords and visiting Gallifrey in the War Games was a mistake. There, I said it. And it's allowed that actually, because as I think I said earlier, once you've introduced a character or shown the place rather than keeping it a mystery, you have lost something. And let us not forget, this program is called Doctor Who, but without the question mark. So
well, okay, well, when the Time Lords, when the War Games was written, they did not know that the show was going to continue. I mean, it was entirely possible that would have been the final episode of Doctor Who. So I almost think that you're almost kind of obliged to kind of provide some answers in that kind of context, in terms of why was he running, why did he leave, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that War Games really kind of dispelled a lot of the really important mysteries. I mean, it created as many questions as there were answers, which for a show like this is good.
I mean, let me get it right. Tell me if I've got it wrong. I think it was in The Name of the Doctor. You saw the moment, I loved it, the moment when they went back to the original storyline, really, and you saw, I know it was The Impossible Girl, I hated that bit, but you saw them getting William Hartnell sneaking into the TARDIS, didn't you, and escaping Gallifrey. I didn't mind that because it was reinforcing the original story that they were bored and they were on the run. It's when you start going back and changing things. Divine and Dragon, there is soft canon and there's hard canon. Hard canon, it sounds like when the Doctor says, is this hard cop, soft cop routine to Spandrel? Hard canon is critical. Soft canon can be forgotten. You mean like the movie Half Human? Hard canon requires thinking ahead and memory of the past. I think we were saying earlier, weren't we, that some Divine and Dragon, some of the things that people see, even casual viewers, cannot be unseen. So everybody does seem to think that Doctor Who is from Gallifrey. Even people who don't watch the show much, they know he's a Time Lord and they know he's from Gallifrey. If we suddenly said to them, oh no, Timeless Children, apparently they've made it change. Oh, people would say, oh, really? You know, people are chuffed. If you go on Mastermind, they'll say Gallifrey, Cerberus. You know, they'll be up for it.
Personally, Brandon, I like the Time Lords, and I like the Time Lords being in the show, because when New Who came back and I enjoyed New Who, you know, the one thing I didn't like is how they started making the Doctor so overpowered and godlike. And I always liked the fact that the Time Lords were above the Doctor. And when you're talking a few minutes ago about the War Games, I love Troughton plays it brilliantly, that fear on his face about they've found him. You know, and they're trying to escape and they think they've got away and they're letting water get inside the TARDIS and all of that. I love all of that. It's just they just didn't know and knew what to do with them, did they?
I just wonder, John, I'm taking your point. I'm just wondering, it was 1969. The show's been running for, well, it's not even 6 years because it was November 63, wasn't it? And they went early. They went early on the home planet, and maybe they should have tried to extend that. Now, after 61 years, it's like, oh, God, that place again. You know why I'm showing you the Vogons from Revenge of the Cybermen? Because Roger Murray Leach, that great designer. Well, why not go back to something that worked? He knew that was a one-off story. Yeah. And what a
I love this story, by the way. I know the story gets a lot of flack, but I love this story.
It's part of the Time Lord Gold Rush era, isn't it?
That's right. Well, see, that's the thing. It's like when the Time Lord started out as the godlike in War Games, right? And then their society started crumbling. They needed to make some money, so they sold off a lot of the odds and ends and Rassilon symbols to other nations in this kind of intergalactic eBay sale. And this is how the Vogons ended up with the little decorations on the wall, like the Rassilon symbol. That's my theory.
Gary, I'm going to just say something before I forget. I think the Vogons are doing cultural appropriation.
And remember, the Doctor kicked Rassilon off of Gallifrey, so he's just gone back in time and he's landed here and he's gone, I'm going to live like a king in the gold now, aren't I? You know,
no, but I love this story. At the end he goes,
I do.
My Sky Striker, my glory. Yeah, I love that.
I just love the whole sarcasm with Sarah and the Doctor. You know, and Harry, isn't it? About I'm not sure if you're aware, old girl, but you're about to hit us.
But I love it's the genius writing. I mean, they had the space. Sorry, she had the space plague, so to speak,
Right.
and just to send her via the transmatter to the planet would cure her. Fantastic, just great, adept writing. Now, Babette Bombshell, that's twice now I've had you on the screen for too long, haven't I? All the Doctor's origin, family, childhood, reasons for leaving Gallifrey should be off limits. Too many writers want to serve their own egos by smearing their thumbs all over the series concept. This is what I mean, Babette. I think we should have held the line for longer than 69. We've gone there now. It's open season, sad to say. But good on the Vogans for, unfortunately, their seal was nicked, culturally appropriated, disgraceful. It's not a very good thing, that is it? Right, I'm going to come to Rachel now as our esteemed actress and queen of the walk. When you watch this story on the acting front, what impressed you? Which actors stand out to you? Which scenes? Oh, unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, unmute. Oh, that's a really good question. Part 3 is probably the most sort of standout scene-wise. Because it's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like they don't speak much, and it's all facial expressions. Yeah, so that would be like the whole entirety of that particular episode. Actually, would be the standout, so to speak. Standout actors. Oh,
do you know who I liked? I'll just say now, just to help everybody out. George Pravda. I loved him as Castellan Spandrel. And I have to say, every scene with him and coordinator Engin, Eric Chitty.
Yes, they're good scenes.
Absolutely. Because Robert Holmes, he knows what he does with those twos. You know, you've got Jago and Lightfoot. He does it. Sabalom, Glitz, and Dibber. He always does it. He has these two-handers. And do you know what? You could leave Spandrel in that Matrix room with Engin, and I was loving it. Their voices, their faces. I actually really do like the Spandrel character. Absolutely love it. So well done, George Pravda and Eric.
I mean, they effectively play the companion.
Yeah, I was
in this
don't
one.
say it. Yeah, they do, don't they? Actually, I've got another scene as well. It's the cliffhanger of part 2, where you think the Doctor's going to get run over by a train, where he's got his foot trapped between the train tracks. Yes, I agree about the Castellan and the controller. They were really good, actually. It's got to be, I think, Peter Pratt, though, coming in, filling in big shoes, that had already been laid out by Delgado. And Delgado had obviously passed away, unfortunately, tragically, by that point.
Yeah.
So that's it was a smart move, changing the look of the Master. That's also big shoes to fill, and you got to make it your own. And he certainly made it his own. He certainly made it different from Delgado, and I think he knew that it was like make or break. I think I would say, judging by his performance, because people were going to compare him to Delgado as well.
Yeah.
So he had to really work on it, really go for it, and he nails it. He really does.
He nails it. I think Tom Baker obviously wanted to prove a point that he didn't need a companion.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Tom's great. Tom's my least favorite Doctor, I will say. But
hold on.
But he is.
I'm in the crossfire here, by the way.
I like the other Baker. Okay.
I was hovering on the mute button then.
No. Tom is great. Tom's a fantastic actor. He is a great Doctor. He just stayed in the role too long, and I think it impacted his performance. That's all. That's right.
Yeah.
You won't. The director should always be the boss, and obviously, I think by the end, Tom Baker was the boss rather than the director.
Blasphemy, good boy. I will admit, hands down, blasphemy.
Now I know Gary was shocked by this photograph, I think, because it's a rehearsal shot.
I just have never. I know it's a rehearsal shot. I'd never seen it before, and I thought,
Oh,
wow,
really?
that's really
That's a rehearsal
fascinating.
shot, is it?
Yeah, because he hasn't got his.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Oh,
got
of
his
course.
headgear.
Yeah, it's not got his headgear on.
Cup of tea.
And as somebody, and I apologize if I can't find them, was saying in the thread that George Pravda was better here than in Enemy of the World and from the Mutants.
The Mutants. Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah,
I think
absolutely, that's true.
absolutely stand out.
I just want to make a point that Rachel's comment about Tom is going down like a cup of cold soup right now.
Yeah, she's now on probation, and
Yeah,
she's going to have an
probation.
interview with me at the weekend about whether she can stay on the Sense.
Yeah.
Although I say this channel
You have
allows.
shamed the nation
She gets royal dispensation for being the queen of the world.
I must say, people are really shocked when they actually find out that Baker, Tom Baker, is my least favorite Doctor. It's not for portrayal reasons, though.
Yeah, but the thing
She's
is,
just digging the hole
Rachel,
deeper.
Yeah, so much that she just like saying it again and again.
Yeah, can I just say it one more time?
Well,
No,
the
I'm
thing
not
is,
I think the thing about
He's very good.
Spandrel is that you can tell because of the way that Spandrel deals with Barusa, or the way that he when he's talking to the Doctor about just the overall Time Lord Society, you can tell that Spandrel shares a lot of the Doctor's disdain for the way things operate there. And that's great. He's not blatant about it, but you can just tell from his tone and what he says that he is just as dismissive about a lot of the guff on Gallifrey as the Doctor is.
it's interesting. Divan and Dragon kind of agrees with you, Rachel, really. Tom Baker may suffer the same way that David Tennant does. It is possible to remain associated with the role far too long. We were saying this about Tennant coming back. I don't know if that was a good move in the end. Maybe he thought he was serving the show, but it's diminished him as a Doctor. And I think that's of course that's a shame, and it's really diminished Donna because the meta crisis is solved.
Yeah.
Which is
But friends, like I have a lot of friends online who said I'm not even interested in watching his original stuff anymore because they're burned out on him now.
Yeah, and obviously he's got other things on his mind as well. But I loved him, Cardinal Barusa, Angus Mackay.
Oh, yeah.
Absolute. That I mean, I don't know how you call it. I mean, I just call it posh. The way it's absolutely. Was he in Mordrin Undead as the headmaster?
Was he?
He was.
I think
he was. He was.
yeah.
Really? Was it the same guy? Wow.
Yeah, because when he's talking to Turlo, that's your final decision, and then he becomes Black Garden.
Sure?
Yeah,
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And it's because of the way he talks. But in here, I love some of his lines, and he delivers some beautiful lines. And I don't know, it's not clipped. He sparkles. I mean, his diction is spot on.
Oh, he's great. There's another
the way that he just deconstructs, like he says to Runcible, he says, you never gave me any interesting answers before, and I'm not inclined to think you're going to give me any now. So he just decimates.
Oh, yes.
He's very good on a non-Doctor Who as well, which is Only Fools and Horses, where they go after Freddy the Frog's gold, and he's the vicar, and Dalboy's trying to sell him a busted computer.
Is this
And
actor like very adaptable to makeup then, and that just looks completely different? Because I wouldn't have made that connection either.
Yeah. I mean, and Lasai says here, and I was going to mention this about Barusa. The thing is, because we keep going back to blooming Gallifrey and people lazily do it, I don't like this as a Doctor Who fan. Okay, you met Barusa, and Barusa was the Doctor's teacher, so I love this kind of 9 out of 10. Yeah. Yes, sir.
That was great.
But in the end, Barusa ends up becoming corrupt himself in the 5 Doctors, and I hated that.
Yeah. And it's I mean, I didn't mind the way they kind of went about it. Was he wasn't going evil for evil's sake. He just wanted more time, didn't he, in the 5 Doctors? That's what he wanted. He said, I can't get it all done. But I think he became that familiar person of coming back in each Doctor's era, didn't he, up to that point, But I think he was the best Barusa for me.
Quiet One, brilliant quote. This I know I could have sat watching some of these, but it would take me double the length of time. If heroes don't exist, it's necessary to invent
Yeah.
them.
Mm.
Do you know what? That's politicians for you. That's
Yeah.
historians for you. This is very. I have to say there were some great lines about us. I have to say Robert Holmes. Ooh, he's right on it. I have to
And
say.
when he tells the doctor at the very end, 9 out of 10, which is as close, the doctor knows that is as close
Yep.
to a well done as you're ever going to get from this guy. So
And
just go ahead and take it.
and another one, Gary, a great line as well. He goes about reinventing the truth, and he says, "Why didn't you say it was subsidence caused by a load of field mice or something like that?"
Yeah,
He said
yeah.
that to him, didn't he? Brilliant.
I love the fact that Runcible knows the doctor and they don't get. Mind
Hey.
you, the thing is, I was talking about the shadows where the camera work was done. And as a kid, I thought that was a longer sequence by the time I read the book and then watched this again. The other thing, though, was Runcible's death with the harpoon in his back. I mean, that wasn't a knife. That was some enormous javelin. And that was a shocker. And, you know, this is Doctor Who in the 70s. I was a little 8-year-old loving it. And you had people being shrunk, drowned, burned. Well, I always thought the Master looked burned, you see.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you had somebody with a harpoon in their back.
I remember when I was watching this when I was a fair bit younger, and I wondered what on earth Runcible was doing when he comes up and he's like, and I'm like, where is he doing that? And then something he just goes and falls flat on his face, and I'm like, whoa, that's massive.
Yeah.
I think the shooty doctor would have done a dance routine with him, not realizing he had a harpoon in his back.
He wouldn't have known. He'd have been dancing in front of the camera, wouldn't he?
No, the shooting. Why are we back on what was shooting do? Okay, so
So what would Shooty do?
He would, he would see Runcible's body, and the doctor would fall to his knees, and he'd be like, "Why?"
Yeah, I know.
That you answered
like
it
something like
as
that.
well.
No, he would be very much carry on. He'd go, "Whoa, that's a large pole."
I was going to say something really dirty there.
Oh, you know, we're going
Time,
there.
Rachel.
This, to me, The Matrix was a
Yes.
gift from Robert Holmes because it was like a boys. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, Rachel, but it felt like a classic boys' own adventure comic strip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just had every scene that I'd seen in comic strips and stuff like that, all in one episode. And actually, it goes fast. One of my memories, there were before BBC iPlayer and before video and all the rest of it. My memory of Deadly Assassin Part 3 wasn't my favorite episode. It was seen as a dull episode. But actually, when you watch it again, there are so many perils of Pauline going on in one episode that actually you don't have time to go, oh, that's not for me. The Japanese samurai, then the clown, then the this, then the that. It just went on and on and on. It got across what it was supposed to. This is a relentless place and you can't escape it.
Can I just say about what Rachel said about her episode ending? And I agree, that's mine as well, where his foot's stuck and he's trying to get it out. But I always, as a kid, I don't know if it's anyone else, but when you see the train driver coming along, I thought it was a dummy. I always thought it was a dummy, like the train driver.
Well, there's no need to call names.
He did. And actually, when Rachel mentioned that as the end of episode 2, when I was reading about this, that wasn't the end scene. They were underrunning. So it was actually going to be something else was the peril, and they added that one in quickly. Yeah. I love the speed of that train.
Brendan, read the comment.
Well, I know. Yellow card for over the overseas. Is anyone else imagining? I don't think anyone is. It's only you, and you need to see a doctor.
See the way it's like a child master, isn't it?
Let him read the whole comment. Go ahead.
Right. Well, can you imagine Brendan in the 70s and then 80s looking exactly as he does now? God help me. I'd be like some little kind of old geezer. Only in short trousers and a bowl cut hairdo. Well, we've all seen my long photograph playing with toys.
Brendan, by Sunday, there's your homework assignment for Sunday, Brendan. Mock that up on a photo. Find an old photo of yourself and put a bowl cut on it.
I know I've got one, haven't I? You've seen it. You've seen it. No.
I had one jump scare in this, and that was actually the clown.
Yeah.
That's I don't scare very easily, but that made me jump. Not
It's
this
the
time,
scariest.
but
It's the
when I
scariest
first
shot
watched
in this
it years
episode.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's ask you then, because there were loads of perils in episode 3. Which one was the one? Like, I think Rachel, and I'll come back to you to check on that, but was it the clown one that really got you? I'm looking at all of these, and the one that freaked me out, I mean, the one that I don't like even now is the surgeon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the mask, mind you, at the beginning of part 3, when you see that, it's an awful image, and you see that doddery World War One soldier with
Yeah,
the
I was just about to say, what about that bit? Because, clearly that's obviously a dead soldier, right? I'm guessing. He's
it's
got his gas
awful.
mask on. It's like he's like that, isn't he?
Yeah.
And yeah,
That shot with the horse and the soldier. When I first saw that reminded me of the beginning of Genesis.
Yes.
oh
Yeah.
With the gas mask and stuff.
It's the same
But,
quarry as well.
I mean, for me, the clown was unsettling because all the others are physical threat. You have the hunter with the gun, you have the samurai with the sword, you have the surgeon with the big needle.
You've got
And then all of a sudden you have this totally surreal thing of the clown just showing up. That's why it was more unsettling to me, because it wasn't just another manifestation of somebody's out to, get me. It's just out of nowhere.
That's where, sadly, that's when you think, is that why, because this had a kind of warlike reality to it until you got the clown, as you say.
Yeah.
But then you think, is that why in the Ultimate 4 with Trial of a Time Lord, you suddenly had Popelwick, and I just thought, why did we go and I know it's a reality that you create, but you think, oh, please don't spoil it. People are wanting me to put an 8-year-old photograph up. I'll have to wait till Sunday for that one. Our views will go down. Our views will go down.
That's a teaser for Sunday. Come back and
don't worry.
See 8-year-old Brendan in all his glory.
But I have to say, wasn't this so gritty? I loved the speed of that train. It just looks so fast for this little train.
Yeah.
Remember the burning swamp, the marsh gas?
Mm.
Mm.
That was, I mean, in this one episode, you had every parental nightmare of what a kid they'd hope wouldn't see. All happening in one episode.
And the doctor actually trying to kill his foe, not disable him, kill him.
Mm.
And now we have a 15th Doctor who saves the snot monster. I mean, where have we come to? I know. I mean, look at that. That is an iconic shot. That's like a Western. It's
that's on the Target. That's on the Target cover.
It's on the VHS.
No, that's on the VHS cover.
Yeah.
This episode, they could have easily had it just Tom and the actor who played Goth.
Yeah.
They didn't even have to have the Castellan and the controller in it at all, actually.
Well, Rachel, it has episode 3. If you're saying extend it a bit longer, it has a feel of Sherlock Holmes v. Moriarty at the Reichenbach Falls. It has that sense to it that you don't need anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think they do it because obviously it's to remind you that it is in the Matrix. That's probably why Robert Holmes did put those extra bits in.
We've got some great comments coming through here, Rachel. Babette, again, if not for the Matrix, this story would have been a little more of a
That's valid.
The Matrix liberated it from all the political theatre of that, and that's where sci-fi works. Obviously, Lee Sy says Mary Whitehouse was probably having a seizure at this story. But definitely part 3, she just picked her moment. The trouble is, how did the BBC high up? So as you know, they are the real bedwetters in this. If they were shown part 3, 23 minutes of Doctor Who, that by 6:30 all of us kids were being put to bed after watching that, how can they defend themselves against Mary Whitehouse, who's freaking out? I know, it was a killer. It's a shame. I loved it. I had no nightmares.
Midnight now, though, wouldn't they?
The thing is, can I just say, I was there. I had no nightmares.
Yeah.
I loved it. I wanted to know what happened next. And the fuss about the freeze frame of the drowning had no. I didn't even notice that it was freeze frame. In those days, you were just wanting to know what the cliffhanger was, and then it's the music, and then it's normally tea or bed. All this nonsense where people are studying every it was 2 seconds, and it was this.
Yeah,
Sorry, you're getting too academic about it. I was an 8-year-old, which I think is prime. I think RTD says I'm prime audience. 8-year-olds. He always mentions 8-year-olds. No nightmares. Loved it. I was gripped.
You know, but on top of that, you had blimmin' the master and his Time Lord lackeys. They were dosing up on drugs with needles in the blimmin' basement.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that you asked about, like what we remember, one of the things I'll remember, I always flash on in the story is when they find Goth and they're asking him to explain, you know, he gives basically the history of how he met the master. I always, when I first saw this, I thought, you know, he's like spitting all the way through that. He's like going as he's trying, you know what I mean? The way he's breathing as he's dying, and, you know, and the spit's flying all over the place. He says, I found the master on Tercerus, and all of that. I just want to throw out one moment. It's not related to the Matrix that is, I just love in this story. At the very end, I love the way, and you can tell that the doctors become very fond of Engen. Just watching Tom's reaction to Engen as Engen is going on and on and on and on and on about how the Matrix works and everything. At the end, one of my fondest memories of this story is at the very end when Engen is like, he's like, you know, goodbye, doctor. And then the doctor goes, oh, goodbye, Engen, goodbye. I just love the way Tom plays that goodbye to Engen. It shows how fond he's become of it.
Yeah. And I'm watching Stones of Blood at the moment, and it's the same with that Beatrix Lehman. You can see the ones that Tom Baker really gets on with. And
that story, that story, I think, Brendan, you're right, because she's great in it as well. Let's capture it for science, or the big stone ovary. You know, it's perfect casting. Great.
I was just thinking, when you watch this again, you see a lot of Robert Holmes's imprint, though. I mean, you mentioned the drugs, but we had, if I just get to it here, when the Doctor was trying to sneak out the TARDIS, he came up with that contraption, didn't he? Which just makes me think always of Lee Sen with his pop machine sort of thing, you know, and the pipe of poppy and all that sort of stuff. I had the same sequence with the smoking chair when he had the contraption. Why did the Doctor have that contraption in his secondary
it was a bong,
TARDIS?
wasn't it?
It's
yeah.
So
it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And can I say, I've always loved the stasers. I like the design of the stasers. You know, I think that they kept them around for a while, didn't they? And I just think they're a great little Time Lord pistol weapon. They look great. You know, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and sizes and everything, as we should tell Rogue. But
see, I was going to say, I was waiting for you to say what would Shooty do in this situation, and I was primed, ready to.
Barry, we've got an answer for that.
I can't remember what did they call this where he was tortured. Was he in the tower or something?
Yeah.
Because they did a couple of shots where you can see they're up against Star Wars, where we had the scroll obviously at the beginning. Then we had, when you see the panopticon, you have that painted bit at the top, don't you? Which they kind of did again in 5 Doctors to make that whole room look bigger. And then, of course, this sequence where it was painted. And I think that was totally satisfactory.
Yeah. I thought it looked great. And, you know, Tom plays it brilliantly, doesn't he? He's so good.
I don't know. I don't want to be accused of blasphemy.
Oh, you're up on one again. That's it. Right. Okay.
So
no, he's fantastic. He plays it brilliantly.
Too late now.
Damn it!
You see it's the mark of the story in many ways, isn't it? That collar, the Time Lord collar, has sustained. The Time Lord colours of the Pridonians, the Patrexes, and the one I can never say. You know, and the idea that the Pridonian chapter, which is the one the Doctor's part of, the orange ones, are always the ones who have the pesky culprits. Right. Like you had Goth, you had Hengen, wasn't it, with our friend in Arc of Infinity. Yeah. And you go all the way through, don't you? Hengen, what I said. You also had, I love If you're a writer and you have an empty script, who comes up with the word the Castellan? But the Castellan is a great title that carries through from then on. Love it. Absolutely love the Castellan.
Yeah. Yeah, I always loved the Castellan. I don't know. I still like this version of the Castellan. I did think the next one was a little bit too Weasley and a bit too goofy. But you know, and then obviously in Davison's era, the Castellan was acted really well. But I forget his name off the top of my head, but he was very good. Was it
which story?
In Arc of Infinity? Is it?
Wasn't that Michael Goff?
No, Castellan.
Oh,
I don't know his
Jericho?
name. He was in lots of soapy stuff.
Paul something or other, but he was very good as well. But yeah, the original Castellan, I think, it just plays it really well, and he plays off. You were saying earlier, but he plays off Tom really well, doesn't he? You know.
Now we've got a few points here. Reese Roder. That's why us 80s, 90s kids grew up relatively level-headed, I guess, exposed to real life at an early age. I do think that's a part of the thing. You know, with my English teaching head on, I always say, scare the kids, give them an imagination with books. You know, they have to be challenged. You can't just give them easy stuff and patronizing stuff.
As Paul Jericho SG's just said in the chat, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Lasai, when the rabbits are all buried alive and their eyes are bloodshot. Yeah, we're talking about Watership Down and the things we were exposed to as kids, I have to say.
So Heather in the chat had a great comment earlier. It's a while back, but I found it. She says, we need more nightmare fuel for the children. And I adore that term, nightmare fuel. That's exactly right. It says, she's a doctor who's gotten soft, you know, not just with all the crying. Yeah. She's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Can I say something that I'm going to join Rachel here? Poor Rachel, because she was honest about the doctors, is feeling a bit of heat. So I'm going to join you, Rachel, right? In the 4 episodes of Deadly Assassin, although I think we are saying it is one of those good old classics, and, you know, there's a lot of reasons why we think it's great. Yeah. Can I just say, I think the weakest part was part 4. My favorite part was part 2. We could go into why and all the rest of it, but you know what people say, because I think part 4, I didn't like. I'll be honest with you, very honest here. You know, when it was the head-to-head versus the Master and the Doctor in the Panopticon, and some big column comes up and we have to just plug and unplug. Doctor Who was always like that. We had it in Doomsday. Basically, pull the lever that way or Rose goes out, pull the lever that way. It's always a bit basic in the end. But I just didn't feel as though we needed that kind of... It had an element of Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Vader. It had that kind of... I know we're trying to emulate Star Wars, and we had that head-to-head. I didn't think that we needed that. It kind of... As I was saying to Rachel, the Master's good when he's immobile, and suddenly we're having a big fight sequence.
I don't want to contradict. I'm not contradicting you in any way, shape, or form. But do you think, though, that the story would work if there hadn't? Do you think the story at some point in the story needed some kind of actual confrontation between the Doctor and the Master, rather than, because up to that point there hadn't been a single scene of that?
Yeah. I agree. You have to have a climax to the story, whether it's dialogue, whether there's
right.
I think, I'm going to say this now. I mean, Robert Holmes, I really, really, really like, and this lands in so many ways. But since we're talking about part 4, and SG kind of gets a hint of what I was saying, you know, when you go down to the basement and the Masters tricked them, then we're in the kind of Time Lord mortuary.
Yeah,
I think if this element had been extended more, because the head-to-head I've mentioned, really, Gary, was I've got a gun master. He shoots the Castellan instead of the Doctor by accident because the Castellan got in the way. The head-to-head could have been a bit more there.
Yeah, I think I will say, though, that the final fight scene, when the Doctor gives him a cracking punch to the gut, you know, the Master... he's basically a meringue at this point, and I'm pretty sure his fist would go right through him.
Well, RTD would have problems. You're hitting somebody not necessarily disabled,
exactly,
but
yeah.
you're hitting somebody who looks like a Burns victim, and
Yeah.
it's not allowed.
We can't have giant rocket things looking like rockets in Doctor Who anymore. Not on, no.
So so I put myself out there. I'm just seeing if I'm on the chopping block yet. What was your favorite episode out of the 4? I never asked this, and I should do. Every week I regret it.
That's a good question.
Because
3.
for me, it's part 2. So go on, Rachel. You go through on your part 3 choice.
Oh, yeah, it's literally for the reasons that I stated earlier when you asked me about the acting and that. It is literally because they play it so well. It's not too many people in it. There's always some kind of peril. It is weird. It's surreal. It's just overall, it's really good job. Really well done.
I'm saying part 2 because the conspiracy built. You get to see a bit more of the Master, and just to see that cellar basement thing, and to hear that withering voice, and just to start to see there's layers going on of I think it's part 2 when Runcible's got the harpoon, and we've had the shadows up there, and it's the cover up of the conspiracy. And then the Doctor cleverly plays a trick with their law to get out of being killed immediately. I kind of was gripped by that because it's so well written and acted that you've got severe jeopardy. You've got the Master, who we weren't quite sure who he was at this point, playing merry hell, tricking people and using people as pawns that nobody knows about. You've got murders going on. You've got the killed president. It's got scales of jeopardy all over the shop. So to me, part 2 was the one. What about you, John?
I would actually go episode 3 as well. I really enjoy it. I love everything about the Matrix. I think Tom is on fine form in the Matrix, and I love the fact that, what is it, the comment, he's never more deadly when he's being hunted, which sums the Doctor up well. And that's what I call a romp, where I just literally, I will sit and I will just, that episode just goes through like it's been 2 seconds for me. It always does. I just enjoy it so much. But that's me saying my best, but to be honest with you, there's so many of them that could have been.
Does anybody know this answer? Does anyone know this answer? I've been saying all along that because of Star Wars they were doing this, but Liberals Ardos says this is pre-Star Wars, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
it was 1976. I don't think that Star Wars even opened in the UK until like early 78.
So is this a misunderstanding I have had almost from the beginning, that Doctor Who's Deadly Assassin with the scroll, with the head-to-head at the end, which I always think is Obi-Wan v Darth Vader, with various other things. Have I got this completely wrong? So
what you're saying, that the BBC will soon be suing George Lucas?
Yes.
Is that...
Damn.
Greg Smith is agreeing with John and Rachel. I haven't got to Gary yet on his favourite one, I don't think. Part 3, the Doctor has to survive using just his wits. I love him making the blowgun. Yeah, all that is fab. Like I said, it's boys' own stuff, and I don't mean that to sound sexist. Of its time, the boys' own sequels that you saw then and in writing. Heather, see, now it seems as if everyone has little issues here and there with this whole situation on Gallifrey, but I love the whole thing. I'd say part 4, though, because unlike the Doctor, I do like endings. And
Heather, we're talking about Gallifrey after this story.
Yeah, but Gary, as I come to your favourite one, can I just say something before I do forget this? When we criticise New Who, when I think we do it fairly, we sometimes say that the reset and the reboot, it's all too fast and shoddy. But come on, let's call it out. The Master never seems to be explained away. He falls down bloody cracks. He's burnt here, and he keeps coming back. And is it too easily done? My only kind of thinking this time was that the Master had some of the Razalon energy, therefore he could climb out. But
well, they do, and they do acknowledge that in the dialogue, isn't that? The dialogue at the end with the Doctor and Spandrel, where they ponder the possibility I mean, to me, it's like that's about as good as you're going to get in terms of like a full explanation. At least Robert Holmes knew that you can't just dismiss it.
Yeah, not
And
like Planet of Fire.
you can't, you can't
Yeah.
ignore. Yeah.
So what was I saying? Well,
what was the episode with which is the episode which is the only hate keeps me alive? How else can I withstand this pain? Was that episode 2?
Oh,
that's my favorite episode then.
Yeah.
Okay. What was I saying? I'd love to know where you are in America. Peter Pratt was my first master. At the time, the third Doctor hadn't been shown in the States, so I didn't understand all the fuss about the Master's return. Yeah, like I said, I knew of the Master slightly, but not really even. I didn't know much. To me, this is the Master because he's much scarier. Yes, I see parallels with the Master and Goth with Palpatine and Anakin.
Yeah. And Goth hates sand too. Because it gets everywhere.
I think the narrated intro is because there's no companion to exposit to, and Gallifrey needs a decent intro. That's a good point. Maybe I've just got the wrong end of the stick. Isn't it funny how you thin stick in your head? Lisa, he's wearing the sash of Razalon when he falls into the chasm. So basically,
now, if this, you know what? If this had been done with Shooty, he would have had the underpants of Rassilon.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's what will happen if Shooty ever goes back to Gallifrey.
Imbued.
It'll be the briefs of Rassilon.
No, or he'll go in the bushes and he'll have a slash of Razalon.
Yeah.
So over the Overseer, I don't think we're supposed to view the Master as a linear character like the Doctor. The trouble is, over the Overseer, he's now a gold tooth, and I dread to think what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing about though, and I think they did acknowledge, I can't remember, John might be able to remind me if they acknowledged it in the show. It was kind of clear that the Master and the Doctor, whenever they encountered each other, it was in their own kind of like chronological order. Like
yes,
the fifth Doctor, like the Ainley Doctor wouldn't show up to battle Pertwee, that kind of thing. It was like they always met each other. It wasn't like a river song.
No.
It was fairly linear.
The only time I've ever seen it different was just in the comic strip where it was Capaldi's Doctor met Delgado's Master, which is a nice little twist.
Brilliant story.
Can I just say, liberal Zardos? I think you are all quite rightly putting me in the right category here, which is I've got it wrong. Yes, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, they had the scroll as well, didn't they? As in, you got the writing. So yes, it could be that. I agree with that. Darren Bradley, good to see you again. Around 85. So I'm just trying to guess. I left school in 84. All right. Around 85, during a sick day off school. All right. I remember catching an English schools program. Yeah, I know. Remember them, that played a full 2-minute clip of The Deadly Assassin. What? A time when classic Doctor Who rarely got any airtime. My jaw was on the floor. Did you have lockjaw? Because it cured it. But what? An English schools program that played a 2 full-minute clip of what sort of schools program is that? My God.
I just want to acknowledge as well, Bill Dad in the chat saying, I still think the War Chief is the Master. Growing up, I always thought the War Chief was the Master. I just thought he fitted. Yeah. Yeah, he's got the beard, he's got the outfit.
The beard is the thing. Left-handed Jedi, he's crossing it. You're crossing blooming franchises. Tom Baker was my first Doctor. So does that mean he's a good one or a bad one? Now, let's have a look. Gatwell would have had the tears of Razalon. Well, we've had the slash of Razalon. Now we've got the tears of Razalon. The weeping Razalon. Right. Well, I have to say, I really enjoyed that. And it's to me, it's a kind of comfort blanket, Doctor Who, Deadly Assassin. And of course, I was texting Gary the other day. We were picking various possible stories to do. And I know what you were saying, Gary, about this is one of the top draw ones.
If we were to, not that I know we're wrapping up, but what do the three of you think if you had to, just off the cuff, come up with the most important Doctor Who story ever made, ignoring Unearthly Child, obviously, because that was the start, where would this rank in terms of important Doctor Who stories?
I wouldn't say it's particularly important in the history of the show. For me, I think that's more. I would say it's more like 10th Planet and the regeneration into Hartnell, into Troughton from Hartnell, that sort of thing for me. Whereas this, I think, as much as I love the story and I'm glad it was made, if you didn't have it, I don't think it would have changed much. I think, yeah. So
I agree with you there, John. I think although the story, 10th Planet and Power of the Doctor, for lots of reasons, we haven't got them in their entirety, but because of what they did. But then the other one I'll shout out, just not to be just repeating what John said, because that's a good call out. I would say actually as importance, Terror of the Autons, for the introduction of the Master and the first real proper Time Lord. I mean, we had a time meddler, but we weren't quite sure what the hell really what that was all about. But I like the Terror of the Autons because of how it set up Doctor Who going forward.
Okay. All right. Very good.
What about you, Gary?
I guess I kind of agree. I mean, in establishing a lot of the mythology, but I mean, I'm going to have to really think about John's comment of if we didn't have it, a lot of the show could kind of go on. I mean, that's a really interesting point. I'll have to ponder that.
It would just be another twist with it'd be another run with the Time Lords they would be the same as they were from the Three Doctors, wouldn't they, pretty much?
I mean, in a way, John, you know, like and you've reviewed it on your channel, which I'll ask you to call out in a minute. But when you reviewed An Unearthly Child, the truth is you've got episode 1 and episodes 2, 3, and 4, and episode 1 does all the work, doesn't it? And in a way, 10th Planet and Power of Doctor Part 1 does the work.
Yeah.
Then the story happens.
I think so. I think. So I mean, this story, I still love it. One thing I was going to say as well that just popped into my head was when you talk about the time meddler.
Yeah,
I always love that where he finds the time meddlers, the monk's TARDIS, and he says, "Oh, it's 50 years in the future or something." So this is the time the meddling monk who's further into the future. And I always thought, why have you got to do the Doctor going back to Gallifrey at a particular time? Why couldn't it be, right, there's a future era of Gallifrey that he gets to at some point that he's not aware of, you know? There were different things they could have done with Gallifrey, and hopefully one day they might do it.
There's one thing about this story, though, that could teach new writing how to actually do messaging. Is the fact that this is actually this type of story, what's going on in it with the election race and things like that can actually be reflective of today's society. In actual fact, in recent events in America, this would actually be very reflective of that. And obviously that happened before, you know, so we've got
Brendan,
got Joe Biden, what happened to Trump, you know, you could relate.
And you know, I as we go, I just want to put this image in your head. Robert Holmes also wrote Terror of the Autons, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Can you imagine what Deadly Assassin had been like if all of the Time Lords on Gallifrey had been dressed in bowler hats and suits like the Time Lord in Terror of the Autons? That would have been a very interesting episode.
It'll end up looking like that season 2 clip I've seen where they're all in bowler hats in London. It's going to look like that.
Can you just go back to that end of the time image, Brendan? If you can. Well, I was just going to say, so from what you've shown there, is all we've got left to happen in the US is that the Toclafane turn up at some point. We've ticked everything else off now. Is that right? Loads of balls from the sky. Yeah, I can see that happening.
We've got an additional one here from Greg Smith saying episode 10 of War Games is significant. Yep. I think We could do a program quite easily on the most important episodes in Doctor Who. That would be
good idea.
A killer one. But we are being asked in the thread by some people saying, for example, Dougie Stewart says, can we please do the Sea Devils? Dougie, you know how to play me. You know that's my way into Doctor Who. As a little kid, of course, I'd do Sea Devils all day long. I also saw somebody else saying, no, Image of the Fendal. Somebody else is saying Brain of Morbius. Yes, I know. What we're going to do for next week, we haven't decided yet. But please, everybody, if you've enjoyed our content tonight, click on the like button and
there's our mascot.
Switch on those notifications, please. It's going to come and get you.
Yeah, please don't give us a thumbs down just because I committed blasphemy.
Yes, and we know where you are. We have you surrounded. Surrender your subscription.
Yeah, come back and see if Rachel ever sees the light.
I don't know if that will happen.
The truth is, Rachel, obviously a lot of the thread do know and love you, and they've seen you on here and they find your channel. Rachel,
she chooses to change.
Rachel, give us a shout out to what your streams are doing at the moment.
We got all sorts of things on. We cover Doctor Who on a Sunday. Monday we do like TV and film. Tuesday some TikTok reactions. And Wednesday we react to woke news because I am the aptly crowned queen of the woke. Royalty is here. Blasphemy royalty, obviously. But there we go. And then tomorrow I've got one out. And it's just about my time that I spent in Japan. So we talk about everything and all sorts of things. So I haven't filmed that one yet.
Yeah,
I have to do it.
Well, Rachel, my stream next week, says Heather, is of an 8-year-old Brendan. That's the stream. That's it.
Yeah.
See how many views I get if I put an 8-year-old me on a thumbnail. I'll tell you what.
You might get views, but it might be by a local police.
You need to, Brendan. If you do that, then next week you need to wear like one of those like a beanie with a spinner on it.
I'm going to be like Joe
that,
90. Joe 90. That's what I'll be. So, John, tell us about your channel again. I haven't got the caption up, so please tell everybody where to find you.
So I'm on YouTube. I've just launched a channel called Sci-Fi Chronicles that obviously Gary you're familiar with as well, and it's just reviewing Doctor Who from 1963 up to present, and we're just about to record in the next week or so the Keys of Marinus. So
good episode.
Yeah. So really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Sci-Fi Chronicles, you have done in order: An Earthly Child, Edge of Destruction. I've seen all your thumbnails. Marco Polo.
Yeah, that's it. And then I'm also on X, Twitter, and my name on there is at Gallifrey11. So feel free to say hi.
More Gallifrey.
Yeah,
we'll never escape it.
So everybody, thanks for your time. I've enjoyed that. Hopefully you all have a good night. Thank you in the thread, everybody.
Thanks to the chat.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Here we go, Rachael. Your time. Miss Morgan.
Hi.
Back to work, Gary.